Hey everyone, welcome to today's lesson. It's intended for fourth graders, but anyone is welcome to join. My name is Amber Smith, and I'm a fourth grade teacher at Finch Elementary in Spokane, Washington, and I work in District 81. And today we're going to be talking about geometry. We're going to do a little review where we're talking about points and line segments and lines and rays and a little bit more. So grab a piece of paper, a pencil, and your fabulous brain, and let's get started. All right, today we're going to be reviewing some geometry concepts called points, line segments, lines, and rays, maybe a couple other things too. But the reason that it's important for us to understand these geometry concepts is it helps us classify and be able to talk about different geometrical figures. So we're going to start off with reviewing some vocabulary and then looking at some shapes and understanding some different attributes of them, and then practicing a little bit today too. So let's get started. So the first one you need to remember is called a point. So on your paper today, I'd like you to draw somewhere on your paper a point. This is called a point. Sometimes we call them endpoints too. And I'm going to label it with a letter A. We typically label them just so it's easier for us to talk about and say that I'm talking about a certain point. And a point is just a location in space. Right now it's a location on your paper, but a point can be anywhere, and it's just a location out there in space. So that's all it is. So we have point A on our paper. Let's draw another point. I'm going to draw mine up here. And let's label it with a B. We're going to call this point B. So now we have 2 points on our paper. And the next thing that I'd like you to do is actually connect these 2 points with a straight line. If you have a ruler, that's even better. But we're going to connect that with a straight line. And now we've created something different. This is something we actually call a line segment. And a line segment is when we connect 2 endpoints with a line. So it stops on either end. It doesn't keep going, just stops on either end. And the way we would write that, if we were talking about it, is AB, because AB, the 2 endpoints, are forming a line segment. And I just put a little line over the top like that. So if I were talking to someone about line segment AB, I could write it down like that. So that's a line segment. So 2 endpoints, and they just stop on those endpoints. Now let's draw another point. I'm going to draw this point right over here, and I'm going to label it C. And I'm going to connect A and C. I'm going to do something a little bit different. You can do this too. A and C. So you're probably going to notice that AB and AC now look a little bit different. So what's the difference between these two? Well, the one that we've just made is actually called a line. And a line is different. We'd actually write it like this. Or you can write it the other way. Hey, same thing goes for up here. You can reverse those. It still means the same thing. But notice that my symbol looks a little bit different. Now it has 2 arrows on the end, right? Instead of just a line. So it looks a little bit different. And that's because on a line segment, I have 2 endpoints where it stops, and on a line, it goes forever in either direction. It doesn't stop. It keeps on going and going and going forever straight. So that's the difference between those two. All right, let's draw another point, and let's get the conversation going with some other vocab. So I'm going to put this here and make this point D. And I'm going to connect B and D together in still a different way. So look at that for a moment, and what do you notice? What's the difference between, the line segment AB, the line AC, and now this one that I created, which is BD. What in the world is BD? Well, maybe you're noticing that it has an end point at B, and at D, it crosses through it and goes on forever in that one direction. And this is called a ray. So a ray has one endpoint and it goes on forever in the other direction. So that is a ray. So there's a difference between these three, if you can see that. Okay, let's look at adding one more point here. I'm going to call it E. And I'm going to do this. So I just drew another ray. Now this ray is BE. But I've connected it to the other ray. And do you notice anything about what happens when we connect those two rays together? Does it look like something that you've recognized in geometry before? So I'm noticing that it forms something here called an angle. So I've now created an angle. So an angle is created when you combine two rays together and they share a similar endpoint. So they're sharing B right now. And when I write symbolically, how I write an angle is I would write this little arc symbol, and then I would write the different points. So D, B, and E. The endpoint's always going to be right there in the middle. So I could also write it as the other way, EBD, and go the other direction as well. So that is how I would tell you that I'm talking about that angle. So notice, I'm going to circle the different symbols here that we talked about. And notice how they all look very different. So we have the line segment one that is just a straight little line, showing that just means, hey, it's got two endpoints. We've got a line that has an arrow in either direction, meaning this one goes on forever. We've got a ray that says it stops on this first point and goes forever in the other direction. And then we have an angle that's showing that arc symbol to show you that we're talking about an angle. So those are all different symbols you should know when we're talking about geometry, and different vocabulary. So point, line segment, line, ray, and angle are all things that you should know when you're talking about geometry. We're going to use some of that vocabulary to talk about a shape on the next page. So I'm going to draw a rectangle here. I'm going to draw my lines as straight as possible. And I'm going to label some things on here. And while I'm labeling those, I want you to think about, what do you see with this rectangle? Are you noticing anything like line segments or points or angles? So let's talk about that. So can you find some endpoints or points on this? I'm hoping that you notice that we do have some endpoints or points, and they are A, B, C, and D. So we have those 4 points on the corners. And then can you notice any line segments? So do you notice any line segments on this? So let's see. Do you notice that there's a line segment right here? It has 2 endpoints. So A, B is a line segment, and B, C is a line segment. And then we've got C, D is a line segment, and D, A is a line segment. So we have 4 line segments there. And then last but not least, do you notice that there are also angles as part of this rectangle? So a rectangle has some angles. And if you're trying to figure out, like, what does she mean by that? Where is that? It's right here in these corners. So I'm talking about when we go from B to A and A to D, it forms this angle right here, which is a right angle, that perfect kind of L-shaped 90-degree angle. And so I could write it like this. Or I could write it like DAB as well, too. There are 4 angles on here, so I'm going to write them down. And hopefully you can see them as well. All right, so 4 angles that we have there. All right, so what we talked about previously with some of the vocab, we can find in shapes to help us have conversations about shapes and help us understand geometrical figures a little bit better by understanding their line segments, their points, and their angles. Okay, let's do a little practice with that vocabulary to make sure that you've locked those terms in your head. So I'm going to draw some different things and I want you to say what they are. So let's start with this one. So what was this one called? Hopefully you're saying that this is a line segment. And if I were to label it and write it, it would look like that. So there's your line segment. And then what about these? What are these called? And what's their definition? What does it mean? So these are called points. And a point, remember, is just a location in space. That's it. Okay, what about, what is this called? I'm going to give it some different letters. You can give it any letter name. This is called a line because it goes on forever in either direction. And we would write it like this. Okay. And then the last one I want you to remember is a ray. Can you remember how we write a ray? I'm going to give it these letters. How would you write that? With one little arrow. Okay. And then also remember, if you combine 2 rays, you get an angle. So that's an angle. So remember those vocabulary terms. They're going to be important things for you to lock in your head so that you can have good conversations about geometry. So points, line segments, lines, rays, and how those rays form angles. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I look forward to learning with you again soon.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Spokane Public Schools Keep Learning series for mathematics. My name is Mrs. Lynch, and I am the math coach and math interventionist at Ridgeview Elementary School in Spokane Public Schools, and I will be your teacher for this lesson. I am so glad you are joining me today. Today we will be using the mathematical operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, to combine numbers to make a target number. It is a really fun way to practice your basic math facts to support all of the other amazing math that you are doing. Let's get started. Today's game is adapted from the original 24 game. We will add, subtract, multiply, and possibly divide single-digit numbers to make 24. Good luck! When playing this game, you will be given 4 numbers, and you will use each number 1 time to make 24. Using the 4 operations, use whatever it takes, addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, and find a way to make 24. Then see if you can find another way. Here are your numbers, 9, 8, 7, 1. I wonder what you are thinking. Here is what I came up with. 7 plus 8 plus 9 times 1. 7 plus 8 is 15. 15 plus 9 is 24, and 24 times 1 is 24. I also thought about it this way. 9 plus 8 plus 7 times 1. This is showing the associative property. It doesn't matter the order of the numbers I'm adding. They still add up to 24. Now let's try some more numbers. 4, 6, 6, 8. Let's see. Can I use addition or subtraction to get to 24? I could add them all together. 4 plus 6 equals 10, and then 6 plus 8 is 14, and together that makes 24. Let's see if we can find another way. What if we started with 6 times 8? Where would you go from there? I'll give you some time to think about it. I can see that 6 times 8 is 48, so we will definitely need to subtract. 6 times 4 is 24, and I can subtract that from 48 to get 24, because I know that 24 plus 24 is 48. I wonder if there are any other ways to get these numbers to 24. Now it's your turn. Copy down these numbers. 1 star number group is a bit easier than the 2 star group. Think about all of the ways you can put the 4 numbers together to get to 24. Remember, you can only use each number one time, and you must use all 4 numbers. Once you have found ways to make 24, be sure to share them with a learning partner. This might be your brother or sister, your parents or grandparents, or a stuffed animal. You can also reach out and share them with your teacher. Take a picture of your equations and then email it to them. I hope you have enjoyed doing some mathematics today. I sure have. Thank you for joining me as you continue your learning from home. I look forward to seeing you again soon.